Welcome to That Annuity Show, the podcast that will make you an expert in explaining annuities to your clients. Give us 30 minutes each week and we'll shave hours from your client presentations. Now, here's your host, Paul Tyler.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of That Annuity Show. We've got a really interesting guest on this show. I'll tell you in a minute. Ramsey, how are you?
Great. Always glad to be here.
Okay. A lot of news coming out on in-plan annuities. Are you feeling really bullish about that space right now?
100%.
100%. Bruno from Canada. You didn't have an election yet last night, did you?
It's as if.
We're still electing here in Georgia.
That's right. It's not over with.
Yeah.
So I think everybody probably needs a little bit break from politics at this point, as I think we all deserve. And so anyway, with us today is an old friend from way back when, another couple of companies ago. A guy who almost needs no introduction if you're in this space, but Paul Blanco, who is the CEO and founder of Barnum Financial. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Welcome. Nice to see you guys. Great seeing you again, Paul. And I'm glad we reconnected. It's really nice. And Ramsey and Bruno, pleasure meeting both of you guys.
Yeah, well, thank you, Paul. Who knew, walking down a street and at a street cafe would pull us back together. So this is great. So, for those of you who don't know, aren't like in the Northeast, who tell us about Barnum Financial. What is it? Size, product focus, et cetera.
Sure. So it's a great question. So we have about 325 financial professionals and they're from brand new, right off the college campus, to advisors that have been in the business 30, 40 years. We have about 130 staff that help with that. And I'm sure we'll get into what they do and some of the things that we've built here. And then we have about another 250 other staff that work with our financial professionals. It's about 650 total people at Barnum. And I would say that, who are we? I think that one of the things we did here that was really a big decision in the early 2000s was we really grew up as an insurance first firm, and then I saw where the changes were going in the industry, and we really got into the wealth management and the financial planning side. So we truly are helping our clients from A to Z of planning, and I think that was a big differentiator for us early when we did that.
Yeah.
And primarily, we have offices throughout the country right now. So much bad with the pandemic, but a lot of good, where we have offices primarily in the tri-state, but we did open in the last year or so in Seattle, and we have a presence in Charleston and Savannah now, and some in Florida. And then we go really Jersey to Rhode Island is pretty much where our main sites are. The home office is here in Shelton, Connecticut, so that's where I'm sitting today.
Let's see. I knew you when, and even then, your footprint was pretty enormous. But where did this start? So, Paul, you just got this big office, and right, that's the backstory.
Yeah, no, not even close. I was just telling, we had a bunch of brand new first-year advisors get hired 2 weeks ago, and they came into the main office today. And I did a kickoff with them this morning, and I told them the story that in my previous life at MetLife, I had we took over a 9-person financial advisor, 3 staff in 1993, and moved from Brooklyn to Connecticut on a whim on a bankrupt business. I think we were ranked 1,184 out of 1,200 firms in the country. And I took a chance, and it worked out great. Never looked back. And Connecticut and the Barnum people have become our family here. So we're super fortunate for where we are, Mindy and myself.
So to talk a little bit about that evolution in the business. So you started out very insurance focused, and really, there's a lot of power in integrating the discussion with a client, the insurance discussion with a client, with sort of a holistic discussion around planning and vis-a-vis sort of investment opportunities. How did you how did you sort of execute that? Because part of that is finding the right people, part of that's finding the right platforms. Did you build? Did you buy? Tell us about that entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so 100% built from bottom up. I think that what happened to me, Ramsey, was I'm really big on the basics of the business, even though I done a lot of creative things and innovative, but I never frayed from the basics. And you have to get in front of clients on a favorable basis. And then when you get there, you have to be able to help them with their needs. And when you're only in the insurance space, you were very limited. So when in the late 90s, when we started doing annuities and then it went to, assets under management, I felt like you work so hard to get to this point with the client that why would you not help them with everything? And truly, so we had this thing where you had investments, focused investments advisors, and then you had protection advisors. And what I would say that, what one would you rather be? And a lot of the kids would raise their hand, I want to be the investment one. And I'd say, this is your responsibility, right? You got to make sure their life insurance, their disability, their long-term care, their Medicaid, their, property and casualty is all under control. And why wouldn't you do that through a planning chassis? And then poo on you, fee or free, right? So we started that journey, and we fast forward in the 30 billions of AUM. We were always a firm that we truly believed in some of the annuity space, the riders that were there, and some of the things that could help clients with. So when you look at our asset business, it's probably a 70-30 split between, wrap accounts and separately managed stuff, and then using annuities to help with. We really made a big move in early 2000s to income. I think we were one of the first firms to do that, where it was the number. Everyone wanted that number. I need $1 million, or I need $2 million, or 500,000. We really started talking income. So I think that really played into what we did. And we brought in a lot more of hybrid advisors and advisors that really wanted to do that planning. That's not to say when you get the size that we have, we do have advisors here that specialize on the investment side and some that specialize in insurance. But 85-90% are really truly those hybrids.
That's really interesting, and that's kind of where my follow-up is. How do you marry the two? How do you marry the insurance and the investment? And it's not just the products; it's also the mentalities and everything that comes with it. I think everyone agrees that it's not one or the other. You have to have both. How do you convey that message to your clients, to the audience, to the general public, as to how the two are interconnected, and how to ultimately use both in terms of planning?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and we believe that, I use this analogy: if you take your car in to get fixed, and you pull up, and they say, "Oh, you need brakes," and you're like, "You didn't even look at the car yet." And I kind of use that analogy in the beginning with our advisors, saying, it's very hard to make decisions on your protection side products if you don't understand what they have on the asset side, and vice versa, right? So I think what ended up happening was, what do you really want? And what's interesting is when you're meeting with a client, you might start out, not every client is starting out with 7 different products with us. Maybe they're starting out with 2 or 3, or maybe they're only on the protection side and eventually on the asset side. But I think if you have the great service model and you educate them, you're able to really guide them in the right direction. And it's very hard to retire today if you don't have all of your financial house in order. So I think that was the genesis of it. And what we also did, and we'll talk about it more, I think, as we go through this, but we also put the right infrastructure around, because you don't have to know everything as an advisor. We have the people here to help them with that. So it's very hard. There's many of our advisors that have the skill to do it all, but there's some that really just are focused here and they're great at it. But then we put that other infrastructure around them to help them deliver those opportunities to their clients.
Yeah, and maybe, I'm going to give you a question to go a little bit more into the infrastructure. We're living in a world of extremes, and if I ask, people at some of these conferences, what's the future of distribution, depending on the conference, one is, okay, it's all going to be roll-ups, acquisitions. We're going to create mega agencies by buying these things up. The other hand will be, Paul, it's all digital. You're going to be selling stuff on the web. We're still going to figure stuff out. Talk to us about your view. Where's growth coming from here, and how does it work?
Yeah. So first thing is, I do agree with some of your statements on the digital side, right? We believe that you have to be digitally enabled, advisor assisted. So that's number one. And I'll get into that a little bit. The other thing we believe is that you need scale, right? So when you talk about roll-ups and all these acquisitions and mergers, I think they're all trying to build scale. And, I didn't talk about myself much in the beginning, but I was a college baseball player. I played baseball my whole life. I played football up until, I was in my 30s. And if you think about the sports world today, it's very specialized. So you look at baseball, for example, you have a lefty pitcher that comes in for 1 out. So what I did was I sort of took that approach to financial services, right? So when you think of distribution, well, we lost our way a little bit. And Ramsey, you had a great question about the asset side, right? So we start this journey, and then you get 6 or 7 years in, and that's a less hard business than maybe the protection side. So I started to look at the industry and saw wholesaling. So I'd have a wholesaler come in from a life company, and he or she would do a great meeting and get everyone juiced up, and then that person would leave, and they wouldn't show up for 90 days. And I'm like, oh my God, my life sales and the way we're helping clients is not where we need to be. So I went to one of my young reps that was really sophisticated and, didn't like part of the advisor part, but loved the protection side. And I said, hey, you're going to become my first wholesaler. What do you mean? Well, you're going to work directly for Barnum, and every day you're going to wake up and your job is to continue to grow our life sales. And then we did that with someone in the annuity space. And then we did that with someone in the investment space and the disability and, LTC. And we started to build those resources so that you can help a client to do that. And I think part of the problem, one of the things I've seen that happen is in a lot of these big companies, they're not seeing that because they're so far removed from the day to day. So I would say I still think I have an FA mindset and a CEO body, right? So I'm still understanding what's going on and how it's made. So I think that's been a big differentiator for us.
So then these are like internal wholesalers for you, sort of a specific product specialists.
Yes, and the same thing on the planning side. Mm-hmm. So that division, we call it our wealth strategies division, Ramsey, and there's about 25 people there that are on Barnum's payroll. They're not going out and splitting cases. They're truly on the payroll of the firm, and they're helping the FAs with their clients, and from advanced market lawyers to product specialists. And the interesting thing that happened back to the pandemic is if I wanted Paul Tyler, and he was my life specialist, and I wanted him to go see 10 clients a week, he would be like, I can't really do that. I have to drive all over creation. Now they're able to be on, 8 to 10 client meetings a day because they can Zoom right in and help an advisor at point where they need sophistication level that the FA doesn't get. And it's interesting. Way back in the early 2000s, I had went to a major wirehouse, one of the top ones in the industry, and they had done a deal with the company that we were with, where they were going to help us with high-end clients, and they called it a VIP meeting. And you walk in, I sat at the head of the table, and they had all those people that I just talked about at the table. And I said, oh my God, like imagine creating that experience for clients every day. And that's kind of what we built here at Barnum.
So who do you see as like your competitors or peers? Because as you talk about your business, I can see on one hand it could be wirehouses, because you're trying to bring that complete set of services in the way that they do. It could be It could be other RIAs. It could be lots of different things. Like, where do you typically run into people, I guess, in terms of your competitively?
Yeah, we very, very rarely run into competition, but I would say it's all of them, right? I get that question frequently, like, who is it? Well, we could be competing against the wires. And what we find, it's a little disjointed, back to my earlier comment, right? It's a wire that's managing the assets and an insurance carrier that's managing the protection. And we're saying, hey, how would you like to have that all in one place with all these great resources around you that understand what's happening with each one? So I think it's a combination of both. And it's interesting, Ramsey, because the other question I get that's similar to that is, who's your client? And it's really everyone, because at 320 plus financial professionals, the brand new kid off the college campus is working with maybe people that are in their generation versus the FA that's been with me 30 years, that's fully credentialed, is working with more of the affluent clients. So I think it's a combination of that.
Yeah. So you have in there just so there's Henry's, what, high earners, not rich yet, and then there's the mass affluent, and then there's high net worth. You cover all three of those categories.
Yeah, we cover all three, and we have we can literally, and it's interesting when I meet people in the marketplace and they say, hey, how do I start with you? I can say to them, I could set up the right advisor with you based on what you need. And that's a really interesting play, because when you're in this industry, you might get in front of someone and you have to be this chameleon. Well, we can be as good as we need to be. And we do a lot of teaming. So you might have a young advisor working with the young clients, and then the senior advisor working with the parents of those people, and vice versa. So I think that's really big about, once again, back to scale.
Yeah. Over the last couple of episodes, we had some really good discussions about in-plan annuities, where this will head. Secure Act opened up some opportunities. Paul, you've been in this space, in the workspace, for a long time. You mentioned, the change in, being able to communicate with people virtually. What's happening in your mind with, changing how people are working, with the opportunities or the changes in working with companies to bring financial planning through their employer?
Well, as you know, and I'll share it with Bruno and Ramsey, back in 2000, we were doing a seminar series. It was one that was owned in the industry that got sold a couple of times to different carriers. But it was a 4-part series of A to Z of financial planning. And I went off to the workshop, and they said, you got to come back and you bring this to the community colleges and you make it a part of the continue ed there. And we did it. And we were in 3 community colleges in Connecticut at the time, and we'd have 20 couples show up. We'd give them this big binder. It was A to Z of planning. It was 4 nights. And then out of the 20, 15 or 16 would book meetings, and then 12 would come in and become clients. And I'm like, wow, this is just an amazing tool. And, I spent 25 years at MetLife, and I would do this value prop presentation for new recruits. And I would talk about Met's vision to get this many customers, and that they have, 89 of the Fortune 100. And one day it hit me. I'm like, holy mackerel, what if I bring this to corporations? And we started that journey, and we really got 3 Fortune 500 companies immediately to say yes. I hired someone that's still with me today that goes out and helps bring in the companies. And then we formed this great partnership with the institutional footprint. And today, God, we probably are in over 1,000 corporations right now where we're doing financial planning in the workplace. And the crazy thing that happened, once again, back to technology and Zoom, is it all used to be face-to-face, and we would partner throughout the country with other FAs in markets that we weren't in. And now, if we're doing a New York company where we would go in there and teach in the workplace, we now do it on Zoom. So they say, well, we can bring our California and our Chicago. And so our FAs are sitting in their offices on Zoom doing, and it's evolved, right? There's the 4-parter that's still there. And then there's, 15 to 20 lunch and learns. And what ends up happening is we become the financial planning firm of choice for those companies. And we're doing that all the time. We probably do 30 to 50 workshops a week nationally. We believe that's the future. And then what ends up happening is during that process, they're able to do, the employees are able to do a meeting with the advisor if they want to. And then we end up getting lots of great clients out of that.
Do you do any work helping with setting up plans, like setting up 401k plans?
Yes, there's probably, back to that specialization, there's probably about 10 or 15 advisors here that spend a good amount of time in that space, from large and small. And then they take this education plan behind it, right? And think about it, Ramsey, as a differentiator for an institutional company where you're out selling group term or group dental, and you're dealing on very, very thin margins, and then saying, hey, we have this partnership to bring in Barnum Financial Group to do all this education for your employees, and there's no cost to that. So that's been a really, really great thing, and our advisors are super consultative, and they do an amazing job in that space.
So while we're on that topic of in-plan annuities, obviously we talked about the comprehensive nature of of your firm, your business, and your background. Assets under management, it's a fairly easy concept for all of us to understand. But how do you generate income? How do you see income being generated through through retirement? How do you view it? And obviously in this particular environment where things have become a little harder. So how do you advise your clients to accumulate and generate income through retirement?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll give you a pretty long answer, but I think it will take us in a different direction. So I opened up with, on this segment part, about digitally enabled, advisor assisted, right? So you grow up and you start to build a book of business, and then how do you scale it, right? And there's teaming and stuff like that. So way back, you start to think about, there's really three things that go on in clients' lives, right? They have products that we all talk about here that have changes that happen to those products. So we created a tool, and it's all digital now, that has, let's just say there's 50 tiles, and those tiles all have different algorithms around us to tell us when it's the right time to help a client and call them. So we'll use annuities for a minute. When you think of income, you could have bought an annuity in 2008 and it had a GMIB rider or any rider on it. And if you take that product and you can look at, the algorithm actually tells us when we should be looking at maybe a different product for that client, and it helps the FA if they're looking for income. Same thing on the protection side. You might have products that are paying up or not performing at the level, and the tool will help with that. And we push all that information to our advisors on a day-to-day basis so they know who to call. Then there's a lot of age-based things in there. And those tools also do the same thing, where there's certain ages where you should be triggered to take care of certain things in your planning. So I think back to my earlier statement, to your point, though, on the income side, I think it's a combination of using wrap accounts, annuities, and protection products all together to make sure that they have enough income to be able and not outlive it. And that's, I think, using all of that together. And that's where I'm concerned of an industry where it's maybe only one, and I don't think you could do it with one product.
Yeah, well, you mentioned scale, Paul, and I think this is kind of an advantage of scale, because if I only have 5 clients, those are going to be some pretty empty tiles.
Yes.
Now I remember, again, back to 2000. This is Ramsey and Bruno. I won't name names. You can imagine, Paul, who this was. God, can you believe some agency manager wants to do his own thing? He's got this software CRM outside company. Oh, well, wants to put in here or not do what we want. Well, what's it called? Salesforce. And so you've been in InsurTech before InsurTech existed. What kind of scale do you have to have in order to make those algorithms feed enough agents so that you get calls to make?
I want to say that our 10-year vision is to impact as many lives as possible. We have 308,000 households as clients right now, and our vision is by 2030 to get to 1 million. Okay, so 308,000 households are in there, and that tool is working. All those tiles are working, and when you look at an advisor that has 5, 6, 2,000 clients, how do you make it simpler for them to service them properly and to make sure they're calling at the right time for the client? And that's what we did. And it went from, it was on, paper to Excel to SQL to ultimately landing on Salesforce. And then I want to say we started that journey probably 15 years ago. And we have, 4 people on a day-to-day basis that are working on the code and writing the code and developing the pieces. And then new things come up, right? And we can be real time and very nimble to say, oh man, we need to check with that. So make someone up, like the fiduciary rules on how frequently you have to meet with your clients that are in these products. And we take the tool and we build out the alerts on that so that they can run their whole practice and scale it. So advisors in the beginning, if you show them how to be more efficient, they'll use it. And now I would say that their whole practice, their whole team, we're power users. So everyone uses it. Everything we do sits on that tool. And, if you think about like Waze, right, how that digital loop goes, as we keep building that loop, our tool is getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and just continuing to help them to be able to run huge practices and do the right stuff with it. And there's simple things like, this industry has a huge problem with orphans, right? Meaning people leave, they pass away, they leave, and then, so we made it so simple on the tool where we have an orphan management program where you just click boxes and you say, I want to give Paul Tyler 3 leads a day. I want them to look like this, and I want them to come at this time. And you hit the buttons, and then the tool just does it. So we're really doing a lot of service for our customers, and we're really trying to make sure we're there at the right time for them.
All right. So Paul, I've got sort of one parting question, because we're pretty much at the. Unfortunately, we'd love to have you back because there's actually more to talk about here. But
sure.
So you've got fantastic sort of growth goals. You said between now and 2030. Paul Tyler had mentioned earlier the sort of the consolidation and aggregation we're seeing in the business. I think you're still independent at this point.
Well, we are Mass Mutual. We're at Mass Mutual, and that's our broker dealer. We're on their corporate RIA.
Yeah.
And, they made some really great moves here with the partnership with Commonwealth on the broker dealer side.
Uh-huh.
And so we feel really good where we are, but continue down the path where you're going.
Yeah. So I can see a world where you're an acquirer, or you could be acquired. Either way, sounds like with the business you built, you have a lot of options. So it's probably a bit of an impertinent question, so I apologize.
No, that's
okay. But very interested to see how this progresses for you in the coming years.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued by that. And as I listen to you guys, I watch your show. I have so much respect for Paul and what he's accomplished, and I'm watching the industry right now, and I think it's amazing where the opportunities are going to lie for who understands distribution and helping clients. I said that to the new advisors this morning. That's the most important thing, right? When it's all said and done, we're trying to help the end user be protected and be able to retire and not outlive their money. And I think that whoever plays that really well in this space is going to continue to win. So I'm paying attention a lot to what's going on, and I've become like a little bit of a distribution historian. And, growing up on the insurance space, I mean, there's a lot less companies today than there used to be. And every day there's a roll up or someone merging. And I think it's just going to bring tons of opportunity to us from a technology perspective and from a distribution perspective.
Oh, this is
And
great.
Paul, Tyler, there's a new podcast, if I saw it correctly, coming up on that exact topic. That's
right.
If I saw it right.
What is it?
It's, the Prime Life. Yeah, I'll send you a link. It's we're our first foray, Paul, into doing a little more on the consumer side.
Great.
Trying to reach the 60+ group.
Oh, I
I'll send you a link.
actually did see. I saw your mailbox drop with the Medicare thing, and
Yeah.
so I got a chuckle out of that.
Yeah, listen. Hey, we're you never stop learning, right, or experimenting.
That's the
Paul.
that's the key, and I mean, we didn't get into a lot of that stuff, but we can talk more a different time. But I do think creating an environment of lifelong learners and high performance is one of the secret sauces to Barnum too. And that culture doesn't exist. It's Ramsey, to your point earlier. There's so many different channels. And sometimes, we always teach people be in business for yourself, but not by yourself. And you could be an entrepreneur in an entrepreneurial platform where I find that a lot of people that grew up on the career side that went to maybe one of the 4 or 5 different channels, sometimes it gets a little lonely out there and they don't have some of the resources they want. So I think it's ours to lose here at Barnum.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, listen, thank you so much for your time. You're doing great stuff in business. And as Ramsey said, love to have you back. We'll reach out and a lot more to talk about. Bruno, Ramsey, thanks so much. And Paul, what's the best way for people to either learn more about Barnum or get in touch with you?
Yeah, go on to barnumfg.com or just email me at pblanco@barnumfg.
Excellent. All right. Listen, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks to our listeners.
Keep up the good work.
Hey, thanks,
I appreciate all the work you're doing for the industry. So thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks. Listen, we really do appreciate it.
You got it.
Thanks. And listen, join us again next week for another episode of That Annuity Show. Thanks.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend us on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information at thatannuityshow.com.